Before we bring Django up, we'll start like we always do with a few quick headlines and updates from around Tezos and Etherlink, and then we'll get into the conversation and open the floor for questions near the end. Marfa 2025, a pilgrimage to nowhere. This one looks at Marfa through the lens of the Tezos art crowd and why people are making the trip out there. It's remote, it's quiet, cell service barely works, and somehow that makes the whole thing feel more intentional. People show up because they want real conversations again, not just replies and timelines. Art Blocks held its fifth anniversary gathering, so the town was packed with creators, collectors, and a bunch of familiar names. The interesting part is how much Tezos' presence there was this year. It used to be a handful of artists. Now it's an actual showing. You've got folks like Paper Buddha and Die with the Most Likes hosting Airbnb meetups, plus artists talking about how the in person side of the space keeps shaping their work. Yoshi spends a lot of time on that part, how the conversations in Marfa stretch from morning coffee to late night hangs, and how those face to face moments carry more weight than anything online. It's the stuff you remember months later. If you want the full story, including the installations and why people describe this as a pilgrimage, the full article's up on news.tezoscommons.org. It's time to go live. Summary for the show. This one makes the case for something the Tezos art scene hasn't fully leaned into yet, which is going live. Not polished promos, not clips, but real time presence. Yoshi looks at why that matters and why it actually fills the gap between posting online and showing up in person at events like Marfa. He starts by tracing art back to its roots and then jumps to where we are now, where everything is digital but feels very little feels personal. The argument is simple. People understand Tezos a lot faster when they see the people behind it. Watching an artist paint, code, compose, or mint live carries a different kind of weight, especially for newcomers who don't get Web3 yet. Seeing the process demystifies the whole thing. He also ties it back to what we've been seeing at in person meetups, Marfa, Testones matches, Artsy Fridays. The energy from those real interactions is what people remember. Live streaming is basically the online version of that, and it gives the space a face again. And as he points out, 1 hour of streaming turns into weeks of clips, which helps visibility without feeling manufactured. The article ends on a challenge to creators: go live, whatever platform you use, and let people watch the work happen. Show the process, not the highlight reel. If you want the full piece, it's up now over at news.tezoscommons.org. If you're trying to keep up with everything happening on Tezos, the Baking Sheet is your weekly shortcut. It's a quick read that pulls together the biggest updates from across the network, project news, community highlights, and everything in between. No filler, just what's worth knowing. You can sign up at bakingsheet.tezoscommons.org. And a quick heads up, nominations for this month's Tezos Community Rewards program are open. Here's how to make sure yours count. You've got two options. First, you can head over to tezoscommons.org/rewards and fill out the short form there. Second, you could just simply post your nomination directly on social media and make sure to include the word hashtag TezosCRP, all one word. Just CRP isn't enough. We probably won't see it. If you're tagging someone's post, that's all you need. But if you're writing your own, like a list of names, be sure to include a short note about what each person did. That extra bit of context helps us review nominations properly. So, again, use the form or post with hashtag TezosCRP, all one word, and your reason. That's how we make sure recognition goes to real contributions, not just popularity. Well, that's the news and the housekeeping for this week. If you want to go deeper on any of that, hit the links and catch up after the space. For now, let's get into why we're really here tonight. We've been talking about real contributions and the people who keep things moving. A big part of that on Tezos is the staking and DeFi plumbing most folks never see directly. Django Bits is here with us to pull the curtain back on that side of things, especially liquid staking and STXTZ. Now, Django, thank you for joining us. Let's start simple. Do we have him up on stage? I see him as a listener. Yes. Okay, he's moving up.
Yeah, he was seen as a listener for me as well, but for him it showed as a speaker. Now I see him as a speaker. So what's up, Django?
I don't hear him.
Yep, me neither. That's fine. We'll figure it out.
All right. Well, appreciate you being here, Django. I know you have a lot to share, and I will poke and prod you when I get my chance.
Yeah.
No rush. We'll figure it out.
Yep, still no sound. Django, if you're on a PC or whatever, check maybe the permissions for the browser for this website or something for the microphone. Could be that. Or it could just be X being, I don't know, again.
Could be Cheeky X. It has been pooping out all day today. I know there was a fun Cloudflare issue that affected most of Europe.
Yeah. Is it over now? Or is it still going on?
I have no idea. Last I checked, Object wasn't working for me either. But I figured that's just because, I'm not good at it.
Yeah. All right. Message him as well since you cannot. And the funny thing is we tested his mic before the show.
Right.
So it is, so it is something, there we go.
Hi.
I hear you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's always the same with me on Twitter Spaces. Somehow the audio does not work. I can test everything, set up all the permissions, but in the end it still fails. So I'm back on my mobile phone, which seems to work.
You still sound good. You still sound very
wonderful.
good.
Yeah, mobile. Unfortunately.
Okay.
And I think it might be the fact that you still call it a Twitter. Maybe, it doesn't like.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't like that.
Hey, well,
So,
if you saw the
thank
phone
you
I
very
was
much.
running this on, I actually have a Twitter app still. It hasn't updated to X, so I'm keeping it forever.
So thank you very much for the patience and for having me here. It's a great honor to be in a call with you, OGs, waving the flag since years. Yeah, that's really awesome.
Well, thank you, man. I honestly, it's mutual. This is exactly how we feel with you up here, my man. So thank you so much for taking time to do this. I know you aren't the most active, vocal, visible fixture in Tezos, but like if someone asks you what you do, what do you tell them? What are you actually working on in Tezos and crypto right now?
Yeah, I mean, I am basically a contributor for UVIS. UVIS is a DAO, means that's not a company, so you can only be a contributor. You're not an employee of a DAO. So that's what I am. And in fact, I'm not employed by UVIS. I'm employed by a company called Papers in Switzerland, which also does work on UVIS on behalf of other companies. So in the end, I usually would say I'm a project manager. And in Tezos, I've been around since a while, since the crowd sale, to be honest.
Longer than me, at least. I know that. Because I found you here. You had already so many contributions when I joined Tezos. So yeah, you were always like one of the big OGs for me,
Me too.
Thank you. So I was sticking around for quite a long time. Basically, when Tezos came up with the proposal, it was the time when on Ethereum there was this hard fork, or they basically rolled back their chain after, can't even remember correctly, it was some kind of exploit happening on a platform. They decided to roll back, and it was obvious that governance is a real issue. And then Tezos came along, solving exactly that problem, where the chain really can evolve over time. And this was so intriguing that I was immediately caught by it. And I sticked around for also in the difficult early years. And then later on, I think it was 2021 or 2020, can't even remember. I realized that all the pieces come together on Tezos, that you can really create dApps with wallet connections and all of that stuff. And a team published TZ Colors, which was one of the first NFT platforms on Tezos. And I was very thrilled. And just a few months later, a person called Raphael came along and built an NFT marketplace called Ticket Nunc. And it was clear that now you can really mint stuff on Tezos. And I was big.
I was going to say, sorry to interrupt you, Django, but
Sorry.
I wanted to be mentioned that you were one of the very, very first people that actually tried the platform. I remember that you even, funded some new artists to start meeting, and you were like managing something like the fountain back then. And
Yes,
you
exactly.
had so many contributions at the start of Hiketnank, or even
Yes,
before
exactly.
the first big names came in.
Yeah, I was so thrilled about the possibility that you could like mint anything now on Tezos that I really was, I was so thrilled that I was trying to help that this somehow succeeds. I minted the NFT number 36 on Hiketnunk in the very, very early beginnings. And then I created this Twitter account where artists could apply to get some funds to mint a couple of NFTs. And it was also Tezos Commons, which funded that faucet at least one or two times as well and helped some more. In the end, after I think 3 months or 100 days, it was more than 1,000 people who were able to mint their first NFT on Tezos. So I guess it had an impact of some sort. And I am happy that it helped some people, and I hope that I could move a tiny bit for Tezos as well.
Well, Django, your bio says on-chain class of 2011, which is really early in this whole story. Why are you still here when so many people from back then left?
Yeah, because it's still fascinating. I mean, the whole technology is fascinating. But to be honest, I probably did not buy enough Bitcoin to just sit on an island and sip Bahama Mamas by now. No, but I mean, it's still fascinating what's going on. Not always. Sometimes it's a bit cumbersome, a bit boring to some extent in some areas, but there are still a lot of very interesting things going on. So I'm still sticking around. And I learned a lot in the last 14 years.
Was there a point where you almost walked away and then something pulled you back in?
Not really, but sometimes it's just that there are these certain movements that come and go, which sometimes I think do not add a lot of value to the whole idea of it. And many new people coming in, which are just have like quick bucks in mind. And that can then come to some, I don't know, developments which are more or less boring, not too interesting. I mean, all of the meme coin hype, of course, I get it. It's interesting, and also the dynamics of it. But I mean, it obviously died more or less recently, right? So those are some of the developments which were not too interesting for me. I was always looking in applications of blockchain where you can really push the frontier to do something completely new that has not been seen in the past, not just like copy pasting the same stuff over and over again. So I'm always looking for the stuff that is really new, that brings some new possibilities which we have not seen before.
So I take it you missed Fartcoin.
Yes, I actually did miss that one.
I missed it too. I was literal fart in the wind for me. But well, right now Django, your name pops up around Uvas, Stacify, STXTZ, Accurast, Oracles, all kinds of stuff. When people ask what your role is in all of that, do you just still stick by contributor? Like, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a contributor. I'm also some sort of a project manager because, of course, there are actual people building this stuff, developers, and I'm personally not a software developer. I learned recently to code with Claude, not by myself, of course. But so I'm not a developer myself, but I'm a project manager, and I love to be in between the people who code and the people who use stuff, because I think that's a very interesting zone to be there. And what I also love is to work with people who are intelligent, who have their own ideas, and who can bring up something new only together, because it's usually a ping pong of minds that lead to new ideas and better solutions. So yeah, I'm a kind of a project manager. That might sound boring, but I find it very interesting because for me it means to work with very different people who have different talents and then try to bring them all together and create something new. And this was also the case for Stacify and many of the other things I was involved to some extent.
Now, most people know the basic version of the quote unquote model, staking model that Tezos uses, where you delegate, it bakes, you get rewards. Then we have locked staking. How is liquid staking different from all that?
Yeah, so in Tezos, we prior to the Paris B protocol, we had the situation that you could just delegate your tokens to a baker and you would get your rewards depending on the fee structure that the baker did set up. And you could move your tokens whenever you want from one address to another into smart contracts and back. And as long as there is a baker registered on that address, you would get your baking rewards. And then with the Paris B protocol upgrade from Tezos, things changed to that extent. So staking was introduced, which meant that you could stake with the baker, but the tokens would be locked. And you could still delegate, but your rewards would be much lower than if you would stake. And it was obvious that this leads to changes, especially when you think about DeFi. So, for example, on UVUS, but also on basically all other DeFi platforms on the layer 1 Tezos, there were vehicles or smart contracts where you can lock in your Tezos tokens. And while you can delegate from a smart contract, you cannot stake from a smart contract. Because in order to stake, you need to call certain, let's say, internal endpoints of Tezos, which you cannot call from a smart contract. Means you can delegate from a smart contract, but not stake. And this also means that whenever you park your Tez in a smart contract, you will miss out on some of the rewards which would be possible by staking. So that was basically the start of it. And by the way, it's very similar to what you see on Ethereum with Lido and Rocket Pool and all of those platforms. It was born from the same need in the end.
Now,
So,
Django, if you had to explain it to someone who stakes on a phone wallet and never touches DeFi, how would you phrase it?
yeah, I would probably say in Tezos, you can stake in order to earn rewards by participating in proof of stake, but your tokens will be locked. If you stake with ST-Tez or with Stacy, you will have liquid tokens, but you will forfeit some of the rewards that you get, basically 10%. But you still get 90% of your rewards, and your funds will be liquid, and you can use them for whatever you want to use them.
should say that you would still might pay 10% fee to a baker if you are staking with a baker, right?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I think the average might be less by now. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
But yes, you could also pay 10% if you stake with a baker, or you could pay 10% if you stake with Coinbase, which, by the way, just recently, today maybe, decided that they won't offer staking anymore in some areas of the world for Tezos. So yes, other entities could also take some fees.
Okay, so say I show up with some Tez and I decide I want a liquid staking position instead of a classic staked position. What actually happens between clicking stake and seeing the STXTZ in my wallet?
Yes, so in general, you could say there are two ways how to come from Tez to STTez. So one way is you could simply go and buy it on a DEX. So you could go to 3Route, which is the DEX router on the layer 1, and just say, swap my Tez into STTez. It will work, but as the liquidity is not that deep on that market, it would be bad if you want to do that with a big position of Tez. And the real way to do it, or to do it with Stacy, is you go to our platform or to the Stacy platform, stacy.fi, and you connect your wallet. You will then see the balance in Tez that you have in your wallet. And you can decide how much of that wallet you want to stake or to turn into STTez. I call it STTez. It's the easiest to pronounce. So you can choose how much Tez you want to turn into STTez. You will see it, how much you are supposed to get. And then you just click stake and the magic happens. And it takes a couple of seconds. And then the STTez tokens will appear in your wallet.
So where does my Tez actually go in that process?
Yes. So in the end, we need to do a proper staking process with these tokens. So there's no like shortcuts there. In the end, we need to stake them with the baker. And how this works on the Stacy setup, and I might need to dig a bit deeper now in the whole setup that we have, is that the whole Stacy setup consists of a set of smart contracts. Then we have a set of accurate processors, which I can explain a bit later, but in the end, those are automated signers and observers of chain states. And then we have the baker, which is a baker just as any other baker as well. Means a node and a baking node that are run. And that's like the ingredients that we need. What we also need is a couple of nodes, like we are using 5 Tezos nodes as well to create the whole solution. And how it works is like this. So I try to talk you through the flow, and then we can later on talk about single components of this flow. So when you click stake, your Tez will be transferred to the main smart contract. I call it the STTez pool contract. And they will be queued. So there is a little entry, 100 Tez queued for user X. And there are these accurate signers out there. It's actually a cluster of signers. I think it's 39 signers and observers. They all share the same key, and they all share the exact same script. So there's some code running on these processors. And what it does is that it observes this STTez pool contract for new entries in the deposit queue. So we check, did anybody new deposit some Tez? And then, yes, okay, there's an entry, 100 Tez was deposited by user X. We need to stake this. So what happens then is that the automated signers will do a normal staking call or the baker that we use for this solution. And they will, in an atomic operation, and that's really important. So in an atomic operation, these signers withdraw the Tez from the smart contract, from the pool smart contract, and stake it. And in the same operation group, SD-Tez will be minted for the user at the current price. So there's always a price of Tez to SD-Tez. And when this happens, so the moment of minting, that's the whole atomic operation. So it's really withdraw from smart contract, stake with the baker, mint the amount of SD-Tez tokens to the user, and update the smart contract with a new circulating supply of SD-Tez, which also then sets a new price, right?
Django, to quickly ask, where does the oracle, to say so, where does it take the price from? Like where
the price is very
the main
simple.
price
So,
shown?
yes, the price is very simple. It's simply the amount of SD-Tez in circulation on the whole chain divided by the amount of Tez which is currently staked on this baker. So it's really just two numbers. And the smart contract itself keeps track of the amount of SD-Tez in circulation, which it fetches from the token contract. So SD-Tez is its own token contract, so that's a separate contract, an FA2 contract. And the SD-Tez pool contract fetches the fetches the circulating supply from the token contract, and the processors update the amount of Tez which is currently baked also in that smart contract. So the SD-Tez pool smart contract has both numbers. It fetches the circulating supply from the token contract, and it is always updated by the processors from the original balance of staked Tez on the SD-Tez baker. So that's where the price comes from.
So when people see SDXTZ in their wallet, it can just look like another ticker. What does it actually represent when you hold it then?
Yes, if you hold SD-Tez, it represents staked Tez, including the baking rewards, which had accrued since you acquired this token. So this means as the baking rewards come in on the baker, every time when the baking rewards come in on the baker, the Aker's processors observe that. For example, there is an additional 5 Tez coming in from a block that was produced on the layer 1. The first processor that detects this change updates the SD-Tez pool contract by that amount and mints a tiny bit, mints 10% of that amount as SD-Tez, which goes to the US DAO as the fee that SD-Tez is cashing in, you could say. So this means every time when a reward is coming in, one side of the balance increases by the natural amount that was there. So for example, if the reward of 5 Tez came in, the Tez balance of the pool will increase by 5, while the SD-Tez balance will only increase by 10%, so by roughly 0.5 Tez, which means that the price of SD-Tez expressed in Tezos always is increasing a tiny bit, because the Tezos side does increase with the rewards that are coming in, right?
This is kind of similar to CITES, I think, right? That one also increased always relative to the Tez, yeah.
Yes, true. At the time, I did not fully understand how CITES worked under the hood, but yes, it's exactly that. And by the way, there's also in Lido on Ethereum, there are two kinds of tokens. One is STETH, and the other is WSTETH. And WSTETH has the same characteristics. It slowly increases in value. There's also, on Lido, there's also STETH, which does not increase in value, but the balances for each user that is holding a token are continuously updated. So STTest has one of the two characteristics. It has the characteristics where the value accrues inside the token. Now, for some DeFi products, it would be beneficial to not increase the internal value of the token. It would be better to increase the balance or the circulation or the amount circulating. We thought about that initially, and we could extend it in the future to have both of these tokens, but currently it's just one. It's just STTez. So if we would go with the lingo of Lido, we should call it WSTTez, but it's Tezos.
Yeah.
We do our own stuff.
No, that's right. That's right. I'm wondering, like, what type of DeFi projects would it make sense to have your token balance changed instead of, you know, accruing the value, like you say? Like, where is it useful?
The thing is, if you have a token that increases in value, for most platforms, you need to feed the price of this token as well.
So you require Oracle, yeah.
Yes, and if you only could increase the balance, you don't need like an extra Oracle or something.
But
so especially on lending platforms, you would then need to feed in the price. But okay, that's a basic for lending platforms anyway. You always need to feed in the price from somewhere.
But it feels weird, you know, having the balance of your tokens in your wallet change like without you doing anything, right?
Yes, but those are just two ways, and there are, for both use cases, there are specific other fits to it. Yes.
Yeah, great explanation, man. Thanks.
Now, is the value of STTez ever able to go down relative to the XTZ?
Yes, it could happen, but only in a very specific case. So in Tezos, when you are baking in Tezos, as a baker, you can do mistakes, or you can actually try to falsify blocks or the information that you have in blocks, and other people will find it out and will accuse you of trying to
cheating.
Cheating, yes, exactly. So you can be punished. In Tezos, there are various actions where you could be punished. The worst is double baking. And this could lead to the baker actually being slashed of their part of their balance. So this means if a baker has 100,000 Tez baking and then does a double baking, his balance will decrease suddenly, instantly, more or less. And what would happen in our case, if that happened to our baker, is that the Acros processor, which observe the change state and the balance of the baker, they would notice that the balance did decrease, and consequently, they would as well on the balance of the balance sheet of our STTez pool, it would reduce the amount of Tez that is backing the circulating supply of STTez, which means that that would lead to a price decrease of STTez expressed in Tez. So the price is always STTez expressed in Tez, means it's one STTez is 1.0 something Tez, right? Means that if there were punishments on the baker side, it could be that the price does decrease of STTez as a result of this.
That seems like a very one-off, directly maliciously attempted thing. So it would have to be like sabotaged, basically. Sounds like.
Yeah, so that's actually a good point. That would be possible. So a baker could intentionally sabotage it and try to decrease the price of it if he somehow has a way of profiting in a leveraged way, right? So if you for example, had your ST-Tez parked in some sort of a leveraged platform, and you do your bet on a falling price of ST-Tez with some leverage, that could even play out. So that is really one thing, and it will play a role when we talk about the future of ST-Tez, how we try to evolve it further. Because currently there is only one baker baking. We know the person; it's a trusted person. Also in the whole Tezos ecosystem, he's also a very experienced baker. But that part is still, you could say, trust-based. I mean, we know where he lives. We can knock on his door, but still, it is still that part is, to this day, it's still trust-based, you could say. But we are coming up with solutions to get over this. But we can probably talk about it a bit later when we talk about how it will evolve. Let's quickly go back to these potential punishments, for example, from double baking. If you go to TCKT and you check the operation tab under, I think it's under blockchain operations and then double baking, you'll see that there was actually some double baking happening on August 3rd this year. Somebody lost 2,600 tests in one block. But the last double baking was in December 2021. So it's really seldom that it happens. It used to happen more often in the past when the Tezos Node software did not yet have all of the safeguards that it has now. And bakers probably also did not have the experience that they have now, but it practically does not happen anymore. And then there are some other punishments which can happen, like double consensus, but that's usually very small amounts which can get lost.
Yeah, with the attestations, right? But I do remember the case with Gold TZ that got slashed, and if I remember well, most of the double bakes that got slashed, the case was that the baker was running two instances, like two different computers, one as a safeguard in case the first one fails. But something happened and they started running, let's say, at the same time. So they basically tried to double bake, and that's why they got slashed, right?
Yes, exactly. So to my knowledge, it was always not intentional, but by accident. But of course, there was probably also no incentive to do that intentional. Now you could say on this protocol, it could even make sense to do that intentional. So this needs to be accounted for in the future update of it. Yes. So
go ahead. Sorry.
No worries. Are there any other questions for the flow? So we can also play the game backwards. So if you have ST-Tez, how do you get to Tez?
Yeah.
And it's very similar. I mean, you indicate to the smart contract that you want to burn some ST-Tez tokens and redeem them into Tezos. So what happens is you send it to the same pool contract. Again, there will be a queue, like a withdrawal queue or a pending queue. There are actually several queues on that end. So there is a pending queue. And once the Acros bakers check the smart contract, the Acros processors check the smart contract and realize there is somebody who wants to unstake their ST-Tez, the tokens will be, an unstake call will be done to the baker. So the Acros bakers will say unstake N amount of Tez. And we know that this takes some time until it's unstaked. So currently it's 4 cycles, which is roughly 4 days. That you need to wait until your staked Tezos will be liquid again. So we do exactly the same thing. At this moment in time, you go to a waiting queue where you wait for the exact amount of cycles that can happen. And then the real transfer happens from the baker back to the smart contract, and the test, which is supposed to be yours, sits on the smart contract, and there is a final queue that says more or less user X can now withdraw its balance. And on the front end, you basically see some notice that you still need to wait. There's also a countdown where we try to calculate how much time will need to pass. And once that time has passed, you can just withdraw your test from the smart contract. And again, here, the price is applied, of course. So if you come with a certain amount of ST-TES, we calculate the current price in TES and then request that amount of TES from the smart contract. From the baker.
Django, do you see most people simply, swapping their STXTZ to TES on DEXs and just a few coming to the source to arbitrage maybe the price or something? Or do you see more people coming to the source?
I mean, there is a very special case for ST-TES currently, because on the layer 1, there is currently only one platform, TESFIN, where you can deposit ST-TES. We are not yet there with UVS. We are also working on it to replace all of our TES locking contracts with ST-TES locking contracts. And once that is done, there will be demand on the layer 1 for ST-TES. But currently, most demand for ST-TES is not on the layer 1 itself. It's actually on Etherlink. And if you check the biggest holder for ST-TES, it's the bridge to Etherlink. So currently, today, we crossed more than 10 million TES being locked by Stacy. That's a little milestone, by the way. A good day to do that talk here. And of those 10 million TES, we have roughly 9.6 million ST-TES locked in the Etherlink bridge. So more or less all of the ST-TES is on the Etherlink side. And it has a lot to do with the Apple Farm incentives that were set up on the Etherlink side. But it also had to do that ST-TES also solved a problem that existed on Etherlink. So if you used TES previously on Etherlink, you would bridge it through the Etherlink bridge. And the TES would just sit on the bridge contract, on the smart contract, on the Tezos side, doing nothing. So they would not earn any rewards. So ST-TES also solved that problem for Etherlink, that you can participate in the various DeFi platforms and the many new DeFi platforms which come up on the Etherlink side without forfeiting your baking rewards. So it solved a huge problem for the Etherlink side as well.
And it helps also to raise the staking ratio to get it closer to the goal, right? Like, as you said, people that would normally have their XTZ sitting idle in the Etherlink bridge because they want their TES in the Etherlink ecosystem for the DeFi and everything. Now they can have it staked through Stacify and still use it in Etherlink.
Yes, exactly. So that was also one additional goal to increase the amount of staked TES. I don't know where it currently sits.
I think it was 27% or something.
Yes, exactly. So I at the time I thought it even reached a new high, was at least since a few weeks or years or months. But there's still a lot of unstaked TES on the layer 1. So I never understood that. Not staking at all, not delegating at all. But yeah, currently delegating definitely brings you less in rewards than turning it into ST-TES. Of course, if you want to get out of ST-TES, if you unstake, you need to wait these 4 days. You could again use the DEX, which makes sense, but the DEX has currently not that much liquidity in it. We are also planning to replace the current DEX with a flat curve DEX, which allows you bigger trades, because the current one is a CPMM, constant product market DEX, which means has a lot of slippage if you come with big volumes. And we will change it to a flat curve DEX. And then probably we'll also incentivize it to ensure that this pool gets deeper and then really acts as a alternative to quickly turn your ST-Tez into Tez. And then there will be some arbitrage occasions, of course, for those who say, okay, I'm fine with waiting those 4 days for you, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh man, we're running low on time, but I want to ask that question. You mentioned,
Mhm.
there are a bunch of tests still not being even delegated, right?
Mhm.
And I think that on layer one at least, most people who don't stake and simply delegate are usually artists who are
Mhm.
using, their tests in object or whatever
Mhm.
in those platforms. Have
Mhm.
you thought about, or have you tried to maybe integrate it more into the art scene, like on Object, on other platforms, so maybe it makes
Yeah,
more sense for the artists to use STXTZ and get the staking
definitely.
rewards that they lose, instead of just
Yeah,
simply delegating.
definitely. I mean, I reached out to Object at some point already. Somehow it got forgotten on both ends by now, but I need to get that up again. The first signals were positive, I think, and I know the two guys from Object very well, and yeah, we'll ask them again. But of course, yeah, it makes sense to have it all over the place. By the way, it would also make sense to have an alternative to ST-Tez and to Stacy.fi, because as you know, there's the same discussion on Ethereum where Lido was capturing such a huge share of the stake is Ether that it became like a risk for the protocol itself. So,
Yeah.
and that's the same with Stacy. So the Stacy Baker is currently the third biggest by own balance. It's not the biggest by total balance, but yeah, that's a huge issue. And maybe
Yeah, the risk here. So the risk here is basically the concentration of stake
yes,
into one baker, right?
yes, and in the end, also the concentration of votes concerning
Right.
for the Tezos protocol. And maybe that's a good point where we should move into the things that should come up next. So what we are currently planning to do is that, so there is this issue of having only one baker. What we planned since the beginning or thought about since the beginning, but now need to refine and plan out carefully, is that we would want to have a whole group of bakers, public bakers, whoever has the potential to do it, up to 64 bakers, which could take part in the solution. And the cluster of Acros processors would then distribute these funds evenly between the different bakers. These bakers would also earn fees, of course, but they would also need to put something at stake. So it means if they get slashed because they were negligent or acting maliciously, they need to have something at stake that is taken away from them. So that's one topic, multi-bakers.
That's really interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah, so that is a necessary step that will come. We can't tell you yet when, but we are planning for it currently and thinking about how to change what. We built the stuff enough modular that we can exchange even some of the smart contracts, even the central smart contract can be exchanged or swapped. The only thing that can't be swapped is the token contract itself, but it can be swapped. Those contracts, by the way, are all owned by the US DAO. It can only be changed by a governance vote on the US DAO. So one of the future points is this multi-baker setup. Then the next very important point is governance participation. Until now, the SDTES or the US DAO as its owner does not take part in Tezos governance with that huge amount of Tez that is already baked there. So this means we will come up with a solution where the US DAO can decide on how to vote with that accumulated votes. And I think that's very important because you cannot bake and not take part, and then not, you cannot bake and then just not take part in governance, right?
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree.
And then there are some maybe optional features which I would personally love, and that's, for example, like in insurance. What we could do is, so a slashing through double baking can happen accidentally. As we said, in that case, the baker would lose some of its stake. But what we could do to prevent that the price from SDTest does even fall at that moment when a slashing is detected is that we could have a pool of SDTest or TES sitting around, acting as the insurance pool. And when the accurate processors observe a falling balance, they would quickly either burn some SDTest from that pool or shove some TES into the baker's stake to make up for the missing balance. And that could even happen before the price update happens. That would be quite a neat thing. It's like an insurance.
Like
Yeah,
overdraft
to
protection
minimize
in
the
your
risk.
checking account.
Yeah, exactly. So you could before we would update the price that resulted from a slashing, we would just fill it up again. Of course, that has its limits. If there are more than one, if there are constant double bakings, that would pretty much pretty fast drain that insurance pool.
Yeah.
But technically, it's completely doable. It's not even difficult.
Yeah. Call it a stability fund. Like,
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's very important that when you think that SDTest is, for example, used on Superland, on pools where you can loop into your position, means people have leveraged positions on Superland in SDTest. If the price of SDTest drops too much, those positions are at risk, right?
Yeah, they could be liquidated and everything. It could start
Yeah.
a chain reaction, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
but-
it's not that huge. If you check the last double baking punishments, how much was removed from the balance, it's not even that huge, and the price decrease would not be too big.
Yeah.
It really depends, but an insurance could be built.
Would that insurance, that stability fund, however we call it, would it still make sense if you moved into the multi-baker setup? Like if you had, many different bakers baking the
Yeah,
funds?
I feel like
maybe
it would
then
make
even
more
more.
sense.
Yeah, maybe then even more, yes. Because we would not need to trust these bakers. We would just let them do their thing. And
You
if
wouldn't
they
even need
happen,
that deposit.
yes,
Right?
and if they happen to provoke that, the insurance fund would hop in and the bakers would be slashed of their stake, like their SDTest stake, not their Tezos stake, but the stake they need to bring if they want to be part of the SDTest baking group, you could say.
Oh man, so many edge cases you have to think about. So interesting.
Yeah, well, those are the ones that catch you, right? Those are those edge cases are the
Yeah.
ones that get you.
Yeah.
And those are the ones which are really interesting to build because it's not just technical, right? It's also a
Social engineering.
It's also, yeah, exactly. It's also a game of incentives and game theory. And
Yeah.
in the end, it must make sense for these bakers to bake with this protocol, right?
Mm-hmm.
They somehow must profit more than if they would do it on their own, right?
Right. Well, because if the on their own model is better, then why even consider this?
Yeah, exactly. So they must somehow profit more of this than if they do it on their own, and then it would work.
Now, normally we open up at the last 15 minutes, but we plowed right through 10 minutes of that. So I'll open it up for the last 5 if anyone has any questions. I know we have gone over some technical details, some stuff. I do appreciate you doing all this. But yeah, we do have more questions, but I do want to open it up though for the last 5 minutes of the show. So can we talk a little bit about that stacking? Because I mean, that's an interesting sort of like there are people who stack positions. So what does like a more advanced setup with liquid staking look like once someone starts looping it across multiple protocols?
Yeah, I think that probably Superland on Etherlink is currently showing that very nicely how it's done. So basically, you get some SDTs, you put it in a vault as your security, and you lend something against it, USDT, USC, whatever. And then you use that USC and you buy more SDTs and you put it into the same vault again. And you do that over and over again. And what you end up is you have a much bigger vault than your initial capital. And then if the price goes up, which is naturally the case for SDTs, but it depends on what the vault stands against, right? So if the price goes up, you cash in more, you cash in that difference. It's basically leveraged lending. It's not without risk, of course, and but that's something you could do. By the way, what would be interesting for me personally is we could even go and bridge SDTs further into more EVM ecosystems. So there are already bridges from layer 0 to Etherlink from various ecosystems. I recently learned how to set these up as well, and we could bridge SDTs into ecosystems like Base, Arbitrum, BNB, all of these EVM chains. And that could be interesting, but it does need to make sense. There must be a need on it on the other side.
Man, Etherlink sure does make that a little bit easier, doesn't it?
Definitely, yes. So we could have SDTs on Uniswap in the end.
I'd love
But
to see that.
yeah, we need to think where the demand comes from on that side.
Right. Just listing it doesn't mean that it'll get traded.
Yes, but it's not too difficult to set it up. So that's probably a bonus that we will add at some point, or I will add at some point in a
Oh, that's
just
awesome.
out of curiosity.
Now, Django, if we have you back here in a couple of years and things all go the way you hope, what feels different for regular Tez holders who are just now hearing about liquid staking tonight?
Yeah, I hope that we are in a point where DeFi is really flying on Tezos. And at that point, it will be Tezos X, means we'll have Etherlink, we'll have Tezlink, we'll have all of these layer 2s, which are being built currently, and which are connected to each other in the sense that it doesn't even matter on which of these layer 2s you created your token. It's available on the others as well. And I would love to see Tezos to be competing with other strong DeFi ecosystems. I know that's not the case currently, to be honest. I mean, Etherlink does great and is aspiring for sure. But the layer 1, DeFi and layer 1, where I come from, is currently in a bit of a hibernating state. And I hope that this all comes back with Tezlink and when the layer 2s grow together. So I hope that it will be completely easy for people to say, I want to be exposed in Tezos, and then they would just go to their marketplace of choice and just tap Tezos and get some of it, independent of which form it then is, right? Could be SD-Tez, could even be Tez. I don't know.
Yeah. Imagine somebody with their MetaMask or Rabi wallet on Etherlink using 3
Yeah.
route, which could be deployed on Tezlink, right?
Yes, exactly. So you just go to your MetaMask, because that's what people know. I do everything in MetaMask, and they just say, I want to buy Tez. I did read about it. It's great. I want to have it now. And
Yeah.
they don't really care what happens under the hood. And this can be cross-chain in various ways, right? And I mean, that's what I see as that's the current way things change, is that the borders between different chains and markets and dexes are increasingly disappearing, because you can bridge swap within your wallet. People don't even realize that it's a bridging action and a swap happening at the same time. It's just one token in here, one token and network in on one side, and one token and network out on the other side.
Yeah, but at the same time, we need to be careful not to lose all the ideals of decentralization and stuff like that. We don't need decentralization everywhere, in my opinion, but at the same time, we shouldn't sacrifice it all the time and everywhere as well.
Decentralized
Definitely.
plumbing would
That's
be
also
terrible.
why I did just recently move from MetaMask to Rabi. Way better wallet for EVM stuff.
Decentralized plumbing would be terrible.
True. Yeah, but I mean, a lot of this stuff is actually quite decentralized. But I mean, you should always ask how much is it decentralized? Is it sufficiently decentralized or not? 100% decentralized is extremely difficult.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
impossible.
Sorry, Blanks.
Go ahead. No, he's just echoing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Are we gonna see you at Tezday 2026 maybe? Last time
I
I
hope
saw
so.
you gave me some really cool UV stickers. I still have them here in my desk.
Yes, was that in Brussels? I think it was in Brussels, right?
We also met, I think, in Paris as
Paris.
well, 2023. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I hope so. I hope so, to be around. Yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Now, Django,
thank you very much
do
for
you
having
have
me.
anything else that you might want to share before we let you off the hook here? Is there anything else on your mind, or anything else that you would like to?
No, I'm just thankful for all the people that are still around in Tezos and doing their stuff. And because sometimes it's hard when you see markets dropping, and if your eyes are pinned too much on the numbers you see there. But I love to see that there are many passionate people building stuff on Tezos, and can be artists, can be developers. And we had so much help also in this project from other teams and people in the Tezos ecosystem. There are people like Baking Bad who are really awesome. They're always around building good stuff. They know everything. We had a lot of help from the people from Trilitech, which are very active on Etherlink. And we had also a lot of help from the Tezos Foundation, which continuously supported us over the years. And then there are these many people who are using the stuff, who are trusting that we build good stuff. Yeah, that's really just awesome. I still love the community of people who are there for the passion and not just for the big quick bucks, right?
What a great wrap up.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it there for tonight. Django, thanks again for hanging out with us and breaking this stuff down in a way people can actually understand and use. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, if you missed part of our conversation or you want to go back over anything we've talked about, the recording will be up after the space. Listen back. You can go through what we said. We can check out all the risks, move in a way that fits how you actually use Tez. I want to thank everyone who tuned in live or just listened along afterward. I'm Blanks. I'm joined by Kryptonio, and this has been Tuesday Tezday. Everybody who tuned in, stay curious, stay connected, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. See you.